Hey everyone, welcome back to the Shieldmaidens podcast. This is the place where we hope you'll come to be raised up to be a warrior for Christ, while also learning how to fight back against the enemy. And the whole time, we really just want to point you to Jesus. I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Riley.
We are your hosts, and we're so grateful that you're here. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to either watch with us on YouTube or listen along on one of the podcast apps. We're so grateful for that. And while I'm thinking about that, I want to mention on YouTube, if you're watching us on YouTube, or even if you're not, maybe go to YouTube. Please go there and hit the subscribe button. We also would love it if you could like all of our videos, leave us a comment if there's something that you resonate with. And also when you're there, make sure you hit the notification bell because that will give you a notification whenever we have a new video pop up every Tuesday. And also when we have some short clips that come out because we've started doing those too. Mm-hmm. So, and then for the audio podcast only, if that's how you're listening, make sure you're following or subscribing, and we would love it if you could leave us a review and a comment there too. That would help us just boost things as we get the word out as we started doing this podcast. So thank you, though, for spending your time with us. We're grateful. And today we get to have a great friend with us who we'll introduce here in a second. I'll let her say hi. Her name is Stephanie, but Steph, if you want to say hi real quick.
Hey guys.
So everybody knows your voice. So everybody knows the different voices here. We have Stephanie on with us today to talk and share some of her story. We're really grateful that she's here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes, we're so glad you're here. Steph, if you want to, just to get us started, if you want to kind of introduce yourself for the people out there and let us know who you are and what you do and about your family.
All right. So I'm Stephanie Montgomery, and who I am and what I do. So I'm a mental health therapist by day, right?
No big deal. Just
no big
an easy
deal.
question.
So I'm a mental health therapist. I work with kids and families, run a little Christian counseling company in my daytime. And then I come home and I'm mama and I'm wife. And I have 3 amazing teenage boys.
Aww.
They're 17, 19, and 20. And my husband and I just celebrated year 17. Our anniversary was just last weekend. So
congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. And we know your boys and they're so fun.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of like them.
Yeah, you kind of like them. Yeah. You have
just a little bit.
Awesome, wonderful kids, especially for teenage boys.
Yeah, they're pretty great.
Yeah, they really are.
But the fact that I like them and they're teenage boys, that's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's goals.
That is.
It is, right?
Yes.
Those kids you actually like.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's awesome.
So
we just want to know a little bit about your story. Where you come from, what makes you you, what makes you tick, and of course, how you met Jesus.
All right. Gosh, that's a lot, y'all.
I know.
And you can kind of start, you can
Right.
start maybe just like I don't know if there's anything with childhood or how your upbringing growing up that you want to share as far as just your faith background and stuff like that too. If you want to, you can start there if you want. But
so, I was raised in Southern Illinois in the Bible Belt, right? Every Sunday and Wednesday we were in church. And if there were any other days in between, the doors were open, we were there kind of thing. And so I was the youngest of 5, so I was kind of raised an only child. My oldest sister was 18 years older than me.
18?
So 18, yeah. She graduated high school in May, and I was born in July. So she was peace out, and then here comes baby sister.
Your mama.
Right?
I thought your mama having to do that too.
Girl, y'all, I was I won't say accident. I was a surprise. My youngest sister was 14 years old when I was born. She was going into high school, right?
Wow.
So yeah, surprise, here I come. So I was kind of the only child, right, growing up. Because they were all kind of done and out of the house. So I really had 5 parents. I had my parents, and then, if they ever said no, then there was 4 other options. So it was great.
Other people would say yes.
Somebody would always say yes at that point. So I was, like I said, raised not, the only kid, but kind of. And in church all the time, grew up around Jesus, Bible. I was raised Baptist, and so I knew the word. That was one thing I will say they got right. I knew the word, and I just was raised in a very Christian environment. My parents are great. They were married for 51 years when my dad passed a few years ago. And they were great. My dad loved Jesus. My mom loved Jesus. Their relationship was great. I was raised in a very just typical, chill, Midwestern home,
That's a blessing.
Yeah, it really was. It looked very white picket fence-ish, you know? I mean, it was like, oh, our parents are business owners. And, I mean, I was involved in all the things, whether it was church or school or whatever. And I mean, things were good. I mean, so it looked like, right, on the outside. And really, I have to say things were pretty good, all things considered. There was a time, 10, 11, 12-ish years old. So what's that, middle school, I guess? Late elementary, early middle school, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that is a huge part of my story that, you know, not a lot of people know, and I won't go into great detail, but somebody very close to our family that I had experienced sexual abuse from them at about the age of 11, 12-ish. And so things looked perfect, you know, on the outside. And things were really good. It wasn't that things were bad, but that was just kind of this hidden, and kind of still is, this hidden secret that not a lot of people knew about. And so that completely changed as an adult the trajectory of my life. And, you know, it really caused a lot of questions and a lot of, I don't know, just me trying to figure out who I was and what that did to my esteem. And the whole thing about, I mean, my dad was an incredible dad, but I didn't like men for a long time, and I didn't trust them. And so all of that I know now, you know, played into that. So yeah, so grew up very, like I said, typical-ish, Midwestern family, middle school, high school, did all the things, played ball, excelled in sports a lot, had the opportunity to play college ball. I played softball in college, played volleyball in college, played volleyball.
You played both
I
in
did,
college?
yeah.
Wow.
I trained, I played volleyball to train, right? Because I saw,
Sorry, we're good.
softball was my thing. But I played volleyball to train for softball, basically just to keep in shape. And so, but then I played softball for 4 years and then got hurt. And so that last year, I kind of.
last year?
Yeah, my last year.
Oh, what a bummer.
I know, right? But it was okay.
Did you stay in
worked out.
Illinois for college?
No, I went to Tennessee. I went to Bethel. It was Bethel College then. It was Bethel University now.
Okay.
I actually went to visit a friend. It was pretty cool. I went to visit a friend for a weekend and met the volleyball coach, who was also the softball coach. And I met her, and she's like, "Do you play ball?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And that was like on a Friday, and she's like, "How would you like to start school here next week?" And I'm like, "Huh? What?"
Oh my goodness.
So I did. So it was literally like I called my parents. I'm like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Because I always wanted to play college ball, but it just didn't happen coming right out of high school, or so I thought. And literally drove home that Sunday, packed all my stuff, and moved back the next weekend. And was there, and my college experience was incredible. Got to travel, you know, all over the southern. We were in Tennessee, so the southern part of the states, and played ball, and it was so much fun.
Yeah.
Got out of college, came home, thought I was going to get married, was engaged. My senior year, this is another part of my senior year of college. The guy that I was dating asked me to marry him, and in that time, he won the lottery in Illinois.
Wait,
Right.
Hey.
the literal lottery?
The literal, like, not because he asked me to marry him, but literally.
No, right, well, that too.
Well, the literal
because you
lottery.
are a prize.
Yeah, something like that. But no, the literal lottery. He won $12 million.
What?
Called me one
12
night, and he's
million?
like, "Hey, can we meet?" And I'm like, "I just got home. Like, I just come home from college for Christmas break." And he's like, "I just need to meet up with you for a little bit." I was going to see him the next day, but I was pooped. And he's like, "No, we got to talk." So I knew something. I thought something was wrong.
Yeah.
So we met in town, and he's like, "So have you heard of the news? Like, this guy from Olney, Illinois won this lottery and haven't claimed their ticket." And I'm like, "Yeah, what kind of a dummy doesn't claim it?"
Me,
Yeah,
I'm
it
the
was
dummy.
him. It was
Oh
him.
my goodness.
He bought like tickets on the way to work one day and didn't check his tickets until he went back to work. And this guy was like, "Hey, I think you need to check your tickets. The ticket was sold here." And sure enough, like, he won the lottery. I was crazy.
Oh,
So my senior year of college.
Wow.
Yeah, so he wins the lottery. I move home after graduation thinking we're going to get married, you know, planning this big wedding. We built a house, the whole thing. And it just didn't happen. The longer time went on in that wedding planning, the more it showed me, like, the more God showed me that there was this disconnect with us. And one point he looked at me and he just said, "You need God different than I do." And I knew it wasn't going to work. And it wasn't that pretty. I mean, it took some time because I wasn't obedient, like, immediately. But it took some time. But yeah, I broke that off, and we went separate ways, and then life just kind of went from there. So yeah, I don't know what all you want to know, but so that's takes me to college. And
I do have a
Right after
question.
that,
I don't mean to
yeah.
interrupt you, but did God speak to you about this man? Did you, like, I know you said you were already sort of feeling like there was a disconnect.
Yeah.
And then this man said, you know, you need God differently than I do, but had God been direct with you about it? Okay.
I wasn't obedient.
Sought him about it?
Yeah. It's not a good time, right? No,
I'm
not proud of it.
Yeah,
it's never something you want to hear.
No. Well, and I knew, you know, in dating, I mean, we weren't equally yoked, right? And he was a nice guy. He was a kind guy. But he did not love Jesus. And I did. But we had been together for a while. It was just hard. He was like the sweetheart in town. And of course he was like famous when he won the lottery, right? And we had dated for so long, like our families, you know, it was a whole thing. But I knew for a while that we were unequally yoked, and I just thought I could make it work. I thought if I loved him enough and we were together, that he went to church with me, that was never an issue. But he was never a leader. He never a leader for our home or for our family. So I knew, and yes, God did very clearly speak. At one point, after the whole "you need God different than I do" comment, God said it's either me or him.
Oh.
And that's where I wasn't obedient immediately. That taught me a lot about obedience. Like when God says do it, you better do it kind of thing. Don't sit on it and wait. So God said it's either me or him, but you can't have both. And so it took a little bit, but in that little bit, things got real miserable for me. I didn't like him anymore. It wasn't even a love thing. It was I didn't like him anymore. I didn't want to be around him. And so it was on my birthday that summer, we broke up. Oh. I broke up with him. I just knew it wasn't right. Yeah. So, but yeah, God definitely spoke. I'll never forget those words. It's either me or him, but you can't have both.
Wow. Yeah. Like so clear.
Yeah. Very clear.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever heard God audibly.
Yeah.
But you know the difference. I know the difference between my thoughts and voices and God's. Because honestly, it didn't make sense. I mean, I was going to marry this guy who won the lottery. I never had to work. I would have gotten to be a stay-at-home mom. And everything I needed or wanted would have been financially taken care of, but the spiritual component was just not there. And I just knew that I couldn't do that for the rest of my life.
Yeah. That's one of those instances where hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah,
like,
girl.
you know, God could see the end from the beginning.
Yeah.
He could see what he was going to use you for through counseling and through your kids. And you wouldn't have gotten that opportunity had you stayed with him.
Oh, you're right.
So we praise God for it now.
Oh, I'm so thankful.
But when we're
now.
walking through it,
Sure,
not
it was
so much.
so
Tough.
hard
Yeah.
and ugly. Yeah, I'm sure it was not fun.
For sure.
Yeah.
So after that, I said life kind of fell apart. So after that, I just began this time of just trying to figure out who I was. You know, I went through middle school, high school. I played travel ball. I went on to college and played college ball. I mean, that kind of became, you know, my identity. It became who I was. And then I got married to this multi-millionaire, and I'm going to marry got engaged. I was going to marry this guy. And so that became like the whole thing. But all of that, you know, right? So I got hurt in college my senior year. Didn't get to finish out the softball thing. Got engaged. That kind of went to the wayside. Like all the things that I had banked on for so long were just kind of stripped. And so I had to really figure out, like, who am I? And so then I just began this intense battle, you know, with, okay, Steph, this is who you were. This is who you are. And God, where are you in that? And so I eventually was going to this church that it wasn't my parents' little Baptist church I was raised in. I kind of did my own thing. And I can't really explain it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But in the midst of me searching and seeking and just trying to figure out, who am I? Ended up in a relationship with another woman and had never been on my radar before, has never been on my radar since. But it just happened. And I think it took me as much by surprise as it did anybody. It wasn't a long-term thing. It was pretty short-lived, but it rocked. As you can imagine, it rocked me. Rocked my family.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, it was a tough time. You know, I have an amazing family, but they didn't know what to do with that. You know, I remember my mom saying, "Don't you know what the Bible says about this?" I'm like, "Yes, but I don't know what to do." And I did know what the Bible said about it, but what I was feeling, what I was experiencing did not make sense with all of that. And in that time as well is when I started seeking counseling for the whole sexual abuse stuff and trying to figure out like how all that played in. And then then this hatred, honestly, from men just started bubbling up. And I mean, I see how that all plays in together.
For sure.
So I found myself in that relationship, and through a lot of that, there's a lot of church hurt. And I know people, kick around those words pretty easily these days, but there was a lot of church hurt that came with that. And the church had always been my safe place. That was where I spent more time at church, I think, as a teen and in middle school and high school than I did at home. And so it had always been my safe place. But this was not a safe place. And so, I mean, this was almost 25 years ago. So, I mean, things were definitely different than they are now when it comes to that. But, and I was not in the right. I knew it. I mean, I knew that I was in sin, and I knew that some things had to change, but I didn't know how to get there. Yeah. What I felt was real. What I was experiencing, it was real for me. Yeah. And I didn't know how to get past that. And I remember going to my pastor that was at that church, and I mean, he was, because the other person was in the church as well. So, I mean, he was angry. He was upset. He didn't know what to do with it. I see that now. He didn't know how to help. But what he said to me, I don't know anybody who's ever been delivered or healed from this, so I don't know what to tell you, kind of thing. And eventually, totally wrote me off.
Well, and he basically said, "There's basically nothing that God doesn't want you. We don't want you."
Want you to leave my church. Wow. Yeah. So there was no, people. The town I grew up in, super tiny, and everybody knows everybody's stuff, right? I mean, that's good and bad. In this case, it was bad,
right?
But like I went out one morning, and my car window was busted out. I got fired from my job, not because I did anything wrong, but because certain people from this church made some phone calls and said she's not a good influence around kids. Had nothing to do. I was working with teenagers at the time, trying to get them into college. Had nothing to do with anything, but it was just this small town mentality of she's bad, we don't want her around anybody kind of thing. And so then that just played into the whole self-esteem issue, and it was just a bad, low, dark time. Wow. I went through that. Eventually, I'll get to that in a second, how I ended up in Evansville. But I went through that time, lost my job. Family was like arm's distance away because they didn't know what to do with me. They just didn't know how to. And I know that now. They weren't being ugly or, didn't mean to kind of block me out. They just didn't know what to do. Right. Mm-hmm. But it was me and God for a while. And I will never forget, I was laying in the middle of my living room floor. And I mean, I had a little studio apartment, probably about the size of this room. And I remember laying in the living room floor, and I just started taking pill after pill after pill because I didn't know, I didn't want to be here. And I just said, God, if you let me wake up from this, you've got to fix it, because I'm not going to go on like this. I'm not going to live another day feeling this way. And I didn't know how to fix it, right? I knew that I loved Jesus, but then there was this other thing on the other side that didn't match up to that. But I couldn't figure out how to reconcile them. So I said, if you let me wake up from this, it was pain meds. And I'd chewed them like candy. I just kept going. I don't even know how many I took. I just kept going. If you let me wake up from this, that means you're going to do something, because I can't go on like this. I don't want to go on like this. And I woke up the next morning, face down on my apartment floor.
Praise God.
It's mad. You would think I would say praise God, right?
I'm saying praise God, but I know.
I'm glad you woke up.
Thank you.
Praise God, you woke up.
I was mad. I didn't want to wake up. And I said, why? Why did you let me wake up? I don't want to feel this way anymore. But in God's kindness, like he always does, he had a plan. And it wasn't, I would like to say that it was like in that moment, right? Things were great and better and wonderful. They weren't. It took some time, but I began to see God move and to work in my thoughts and in my feelings. The outside didn't change. People were still, I would say, almost tormenting. They were just nasty, and my family still didn't know what to do. And none of that changed, but my heart began to change. And so then I decided at one point, I don't have a job. I mean, nothing. I have nothing left here. And I think that was also at a point where God, sometimes God lets things fall apart because he has something better on the other side. And I would have probably never moved to Evansville by myself, didn't know anybody. But I think that was one way that God got me there. I moved here, didn't know a soul. I got this little 1-bedroom apartment and I didn't know anybody. And I had refused to go to church because church was ugly and it was scary and people there were mean. And I didn't for a long time. So I moved here, looked for a job, got a job as a college admissions recruiter, which I had done in college for a little bit. Great job, mind numbing, whatever. I just do my thing, travel. But again, it was just a healing process. It just over time, I started going to a church that I said I'd never go to again, right? But I started going. I sat in the very back for weeks on end. And one of the staff members there saw me, I guess, week after week and said, hey, this is who I am. Who are you? Who are you? Like, why are you here? Kind of thing. He saw me, right? And he was still scary because I knew he was on staff and it was scary for me. I'm like, I don't know if I want to talk to you or not. He introduced me to Holly Daugherty, one of my dearest friends to this day, and said, I think you guys need to get to know each other. And she led a women's small group, and it was just one thing after another. Things just began to click. And so all of that was just God's little bits along the way of healing. And again, I wish I could say that it was instantaneous. I know for some people it is, right? But for me, it was not. It just took some time. So yeah, after a few years, things just began to be better and better and better. And I was then introduced to my husband. And I will say, I always want to preface with healing did not come, deliverance did not come because I met Daryl. It came well before that. And that had to happen before we met or that never would have worked, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't replace, I couldn't replace that emptiness and what was going on inside of me with a man. That wasn't, I mean, I for the longest time, I was scared of that, right? But Daryl was different. But I met him on the other side of that. And I will say that was also scary because who wants to tell their boyfriend, their now husband, like that conversation was tough. But all that to say, he stepped in at a time where I was ready to meet somebody. And he was very different from anybody that I'd ever dated or been with before. I thought I was going to marry this brawny man, right? That could I was like an athletic person and I'm not like this dainty, female, but I thought I was going to marry the brawny man. And I met and married this artsy fartsy, like tender teddy bear of a dude. Completely opposite from what
full of joy though. Like you can see it exude from his face.
He loves Jesus so much. Yeah. And the beauty of that was he loves Jesus and loved Jesus more than he did me. And I saw that early on. He was so tender and so kind. I didn't know that's what I needed, but God did. So met him. That conversation down the road when things got more serious of, there's this big part of me you need to know. Yeah. Like that could have been a total game changer for him. Yeah. He could have been like, well, woman, you crazy. No, right? Like that's a lot. Bye, right? But he didn't. And he stuck around and God just continued to heal those broken places and to heal where, I loathed men. For so many reasons. The sexual abuse part, yes, but also that pastor who, that hurt. That was hard. That was to the core. He began to heal that so much through my husband. And the other stuff had already been taken care of and God had already dealt with all that and that healing process began. But that piece of it really came with Daryl and just how incredible he was. So we did that. We got married. I was 32. He was 35. I mean, definitely later in life than most of our friends, but it was just right timing. Got married, wanted to have babies. We both wanted babies so much. Just started trying to have babies right away, and it couldn't happen. We could not get pregnant for anything. And for a long time, I felt like that was like a punishment for me. Like God saying, well, you did this. I'm not going to let you get pregnant. It's kind of like this. Okay, you did this. I'm going to give you this. And I know now that wasn't, God doesn't do that. He's a merciful God. He's a good God. Yeah. But I couldn't get pregnant. And we went through the whole infertility studies and all the things and found out we both had infertility issues. Wow. Which, again, we look back and say that's God's goodness because it wasn't just on me. Daryl also, and if it would just have been on him, then he would have had this guilt or whatever. But it was both of us. And we realized, okay, we can fight this and spend every dime we have, but it's not going to happen. And so then we just began that process. Okay, God, You've been so faithful, but we want babies. We want a family. Whatever that has to look like, we want a family. And we met a friend of a friend. It was in Walmart. I should have known things would have been awry if it was at Walmart, right? A friend of a friend at Walmart that was pregnant, and she'd already given up like 4 kids. And we were introduced, and the next thing I know, we're hiring an attorney for this private adoption for a little boy.
Through the woman that was pregnant that you met in Walmart?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I will say, looking back, I saw some red flags early on, but I didn't want to see red flags early on, right? So we moved through that process, September, October, November of that year. Baby was due in January at the time. It's a little boy, and we picked out a name. We had a nursery we'd set up. We were ready. Grant Harrison was going to be his name. We were ready. We wanted this baby. Like I said, we hired an attorney. We were going to doctor's appointments and doing all the things. And in November, took her to a doctor's appointment. I could tell things were off. And she proceeded just to scream at me and berate me and tell me that she had had a dream that I was going to be a horrible mom and she didn't want me to mother her child. And so I was devastated. I had to go home and tell Daryl. He was devastated. I see now that was just the enemy's way of another dig, right? That wasn't God speaking. Looking back, there were red flags early on that we probably should have walked away from, but man, we just wanted a baby, right? We just wanted to be parents. Come to find out, we were one of about 7 families that she had on the hook. And so some of those showed up at the hospital, some did not, but we were one of several.
Wow.
Again, God's mercy just, I'm so thankful that we didn't show up at the hospital expecting to take a baby home. I mean, it was hard, but that would have been
even
harder,
worse.
right? Yeah. Even worse.
Wow.
So that was in November. And we kind of picked ourselves up from that. And, okay, God, what now? We thought this was it, right? And I just began to have this burden for kids in foster care. And that's kind of scary. You never know how that can go one way or the other. And I remember going home and telling Daryl, hey, I think we need to look at this. And he said, absolutely not. He said, I cannot handle another crash and burn. I can't do that. What if we have these kiddos for several months or weeks or years and then they go back, to their bio parents? I can't do that. And so I said, okay. And I still just had this burden for kids in foster care. And so I reached out to some people and I was like, is there anything we can do where it's okay, rights are already terminated and they're not going back home, or are there just kids ready for adoption you just have homes for? And they said, oh yeah. Had no clue. So went back to Daryl. He's like, okay, I can do that. We could, if there's a little bit of, if there's not this big fat question mark at it, we can do this. And we began that process and it went so fast, which I look back now and, it was kind of like pulling teeth before with this other birth mom. And this went beautifully, so smoothly. We did our home study. We're approved for 1.5 kids, which still, I'm like, how's that?
1.5?
1.5. You can have 1.5 children.
How did...
Okay. They go by space.
How does that work?
Right. They go by space in your home. So 1.5 kids.
1.5.
Yeah.
Just a small one.
Just maybe a full-size kid and a half-size kid. I don't know how that works, right? But we got approved and went through the whole process, did all the things. And then we just waited. And we got all these home studies and we said yes to almost every single one. Yep, we're interested. Yep, we're interested. And we just didn't hear anything for a while. And we were like, what is happening, God? And then randomly we get a letter in the mail. And it says, you've been chosen to interview for these 3 boys. Well, we had put our home study in, our case study in, but hadn't heard anything. Our worker hadn't heard anything. Well, normally the workers will get word before families do. And she said, I have no idea what you're talking about, but you better show up if you're interested. It was 4-ish hours away. And so we just planned. We prepped for that day. We went up that weekend, stayed the weekend, and then Monday morning we had our interview. And I remember our workers sending us their pictures and their stories, and it was like, what do you think? And I was like, I think there's 3. Like we were
more
thinking
than 1.5.
1.5. You know, right?
That's double.
Yeah, but they were 3.
That's double 1.5.
Oh my gosh, y'all, they were 3, 4, and 6.
Oh my!
And so I was like, I think there's 3, and I think you're crazy. And first of all, we're only
and they're little.
Yeah, they're tiny, but we're only licensed for 1.5. And so anyway, we went and we did the interview. And how Indiana, at least it did back then, how it worked was they choose 3 families throughout the state, and you go interview, and you're in this room with all of these people, you know, CASA workers and attorneys and DCS workers and foster parents were in there, like all these people, and they grill you from everything but like, I mean, they want to know everything but your blood type, and that was probably on some paperwork too. I don't know. But we left that interview and we were like, we were just wiped because they, you know, they really wanted to know, but they did it for the boys' best interest. They wanted to know if we were a good match. And so that was on a Monday. Didn't hear anything. Finally, the next week I was like, I called my husband. I said, honey, you got to call because I can't do it. I can't wait anymore. And so he called, and they said, we were actually getting ready to call you. We chose you guys. Aww. So, it just went from there. We had to find a house really quick because 1.5 wasn't going to work with 3, right?
3, yeah.
So our church actually had some rental homes that were open, and they had one come open, and they heard what was going on, and they called and said, do you guys want to move into one of the, I mean, it wasn't pretty, y'all. It was ran down, but we made it look as much homey as we could, but we had to do it real fast. So that was in May. Went to meet the boys the next weekend, and it just went from there.
Wow.
And they literally called us mommy and daddy from day one. We met them in a park, and they come running up, mommy, daddy, and our hearts just melted. Yeah. The fact that there were 3, just who cares at that point? I mean, you know?
You can have whatever you want.
Yeah.
You can have anything. That's
Do you
right.
want ice cream and gummy bears?
Oh, yeah. They still get it too, but that's okay. But yeah, so we are mommy and daddy of a 3, 4, and a 6-year-old at the time.
Wow.
And they're 17, 19, and 20 now.
Wow.
Yeah. So the story is long. Apologize for that. The story is
No,
long.
that's
but
perfect.
It's just God's hand in every single bit of it. Yeah. I didn't see it. You know, you don't see that at the time when you're going through all of this, but it's just God's goodness in the middle of all of it. Every step of the way, I see that.
And he is. He's so good.
He is
And you can
good.
see it all. Of course, we know you. But there's parts of your story, I mean, I didn't know and don't know. And like, you can just see it all the way through.
Yeah, and the beauty, we actually named our youngest Grant Harrison, which was our name we had picked out. And, you know, we wondered about that. Should we keep that? And I was like, no, that's our baby's name. That's our baby's name. And Harrison was my maiden name. I don't even know where Grant came from. I just liked it. But I wanted that after my dad, for my dad. And my dad passed a year before we met the boys.
Oh, so
And so, but again, some of God's really just cool little nuggets in there. Grant, our youngest, has the same birthday as my dad.
really?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
That's
Isn't that
awesome.
cool? Yeah. So again,
that's
God's
awesome.
just little nuggets of just goodness through, you know, just proving himself through everything. Hey, I'm still here. Hey, I'm still good.
Yeah.
Because I questioned that a lot. I really did. I questioned that a lot moving through some of this stuff, but he's always just been good and always just been faithful.
So good.
So I have a question for you.
Ask away.
You touched a little bit on the lifestyle that you led after college. As someone who I have a hard time with the balance, trying to find it, how to love somebody who's going through a lifestyle that, you know, maybe isn't aligning with God.
Yeah.
How to love them correctly with an ounce of truth, but, you know, I don't want to shove them out of a church.
Yeah.
So what would you say as to like how best to love somebody who you don't necessarily agree with?
I get that question. So anybody who hears my story, that's
and
the
it doesn't
biggest
even have to
question.
be that, but there's so many other things too that
Sure.
you don't agree with what they're doing. You know, things
Absolutely.
it's not biblical or whatever. Yeah. Not just with that,
But
you
with
know,
this particular
with,
part
like,
of my
sexual sin
story,
or whatever, yeah.
I get that question so much because we are called to love people, right? And we're not called to love people who look like us, act like us, live like us. We're just called to love people. Yep. And I think in the midst of all that was happening, that's the one piece that was left out. You know, I know that because of the leadership aspect and all of that in the church, I know that people were hurt. And I had to take full responsibility for that. And it stunk. But what we're called to do is love people. And we're not called to throw stones, literally, or beer bottles through their back window of their car. We're not called to laugh and mock them. We're not called to call their workplace and say they're not fit to work around humans, around people. We're not called to do that stuff. We're called to love people where they are, and God will sort the rest out. And so what I always say to that is it's your job to love people, and God will take care of the rest. It's not to say, I'm okay with sin. I'm okay with where you are. You just keep doing your thing. It's to say, I'm going to treat you just like I treat anybody else. It's to say, I'm going to love you just like I love anybody else. I'm going to walk alongside, and we're going to do life together. And you're going to know by how I live my life, you're going to know that I don't agree with this, but I love who you are. I love you. God has a plan for you. I think that's the whole thing. When we find people that are, let's just say, sexual sin and call it for what it is.
Which is a whole lot more than just homosexual relationships.
Oh, for
Like,
sure.
Let's just be clear,
sure.
like any sort of, we kind of brush off some of the other stuff that's more accepted.
I think you have to look at the person behind it, right? I mean, you have to look at, if people would have looked at me where I was in that moment, okay, what's going on? What's the backstory here? What's happened? And I've always been the why person, which has driven a lot of people crazy. I think that's also why I chose to go into counseling, right? Because I'm the why person. There's always a reason why. And so I think it's our job to get to love that person and know that person and find out the reason why. And then that's what we deal with. And again, it's not up to me to say what your final destination is. That is between you and Jesus. And all I'm called to do is love you where you are. And I'm going to put my arm around you, and we're going to sit together in church on Sunday, and we're going to go to coffee, and we're going to go to lunch, and we're going to do life together. You're going to know my kids, and they're going to know you. I don't agree with X, Y, and Z, but you may not agree with X, Y, and Z of my life, and that's okay. I'm still going to speak truth. I'm still going to love you, because that's what God has called us to do. And love covers up what? A multitude of sins. Love covers up a lot of things. And so people can see through when you love them and when you don't. They can see through if it's fake. They can see through if you're just faking it till you make it. They know if you love them or not. So that's also my motto, and I don't think I have it on a necklace, but my my life motto is love big. And so most people who know me, sometimes I'm too much for people, and I don't apologize for that. It is what it is. But when I love big, and there's a reason for that, because at the end of my life, I hope and pray that nobody's ever going to be able to say she didn't love well. I just asked my kids yesterday, and my husband, we wrote out the spiritual gifts, and we were talking through those at lunch yesterday. And I said, guys, I want you to look at this list, and I want you to tell me which one mom needs to work on, because I know that there are areas that I've got to improve on. I'm not going to be mad at you. You're not going to get in trouble. Right. But what do you see that I'm lacking? They didn't say love. Thank you, Jesus. They said patience, which, I knew it. Before I even asked, I kind of knew it. But the love component, like that is one thing that is just, with everything that I've gone through and everything that, all the roads that I've walked, that is it. It's just to love people. Yeah, that's it.
That's beautiful.
It is beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And, I've seen other testimonies of other people who have come out of a lifestyle of sexual sin and all different kinds of things. And what's drawn them out is the love of either people or Jesus himself. Like, people are spewing all these things at them, whatever way. And there's one guy in particular I'm thinking of. I don't know him personally. I've just follow him on social media, but it was Jesus himself, like the love of him that drew him to it. Jesus just said, come to me, however you are. And you're right. He will take care of the rest. It might not be overnight. It might not be a quick fix. I'm sure there's healing and things that need, and that's with anything.
That's with anybody. Yeah.
We all come to him so broken and all these pieces, and in your story, I just keep thinking about like the enemy just attacks our identity so early. And, the wholeness of your identity, like with sexual abuse, things with the first fiance who said, you need God different than me. Like, although that was true, that could have been like a dig.
Oh, it was. It was.
It
was. Yeah.
and just all of that, the hurt, all the things that people don't know how to handle, maybe, when something comes up, but it just digs at your identity over and over and over. And it's another reason that we have to know we can only get our identity from Christ.
That's right.
It can't be sports. It can't be our job. It can't be our spouse. It can't be our kids. It can't be, those are all good things, but our identity has to be rooted in who God says we are alone, or because all the other stuff can fall away.
Yeah.
Burn up.
One of the things you mentioned, I think, Riley, I think you mentioned it earlier about, there was a reason that didn't work out. Or so with Daryl and I, with the boys, had we been able to adopt that first child that we thought that private adoption, had that all worked out, we wouldn't have these 3 kids, right? There was a reason. There's a purpose for that. Had I married this guy that didn't love Jesus, I would never have met my incredible husband. Like there is a reason for all those pieces, even the identity part of it. You were talking, it reminded me, even middle school and high school and college, like playing ball, I was good at that. And the enemy tried to use that and twist it like, oh, you're good at this guy thing, like this boy sport. Like you're tomboyish, you're strong. And I was a catcher. Like I was strong. I was stout, But he used that to turn it around to something bad. And truly, God was like, Steph, I gave you that gift. There were things that happened in college that I would have never gotten to experience had I not gone on softball scholarship. I mean, that's just the truth.
Yeah.
And so, he gave me that gift of being athletic. Now, I don't tell now, but I was, right?
You are athletic,
but still,
and you're
like
strong.
I've been able to, shoot hoops with the boys. Like I have 3 boys, and they're all boy.
Yep.
And so I was able to shoot hoops in the yard with them or in the driveway with them, and none of them played baseball, which broke my heart. But they all were athletic in their own way, and so it was cool that I could connect on that level. But it wasn't. Things got turned back around where it wasn't a negative thing that I was athletic and strong and all these things. Like that's a good thing. That's who God created me to be. Yeah. And so it's also enabled us with our kids, because Daryl is, like I said, he's that artsy fartsy, like he's not that brawny man guy who works on things and but he has dealt with identity stuff because of that. And so, but we've been able to instill in our kids, you are who God created you. One of my kids is a runner, y'all. I have not run a day in my life. I will never be a runner.
He's a great runner, too.
He's pretty good.
I've seen him in action.
He's pretty good. But I don't get running, right? I don't understand it. But that's who God created him to be. He is strong. He is fierce. That's a strength for him, But he's also a tender. He'll probably kill me for saying this. No, he won't. He loves to snuggle. Like he's 17 and Mama scratched my back. And we still, he's still tender. And that's okay, too.
Yeah.
But just who you are, who God has created, there's a reason, and it's okay, and it's enough, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing that we as women especially deal with is that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, well, so and so's not like this, or they have this, and I don't have. It's who God created me to be is different, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's just okay.
And if we were all the same, like the body of Christ wouldn't function, because not everybody can be an arm, not everybody can be a leg. Somebody has to be a toenail. I mean,
Ruth, but ew.
they do. I'll take that. I'll be the toenail.
Oh my goodness.
I love it.
I'm just saying, we all have, what I meant was we all have to have different functions and roles, or it would not be a body. It wouldn't work the way that it's supposed to. Not that it's perfect, obviously, here on earth as the body of Christ, but we all have different roles to play and different people that we know and strengths to play to and weaknesses where other people pick us up.
And for the longest time, because of that part of my life that I didn't want to share, and I didn't share with a lot of people until probably this last year or so.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you guys for giving me, I guess, the freedom and the safety to be able to do that. But with a lot of people, I've not had a lot of solid female friendships, because it's like, oh, I got to be careful. I don't. Like God's just given me this. I don't know where I was going with that. I'm sorry.
No, you're so full of love. We were talking about the body of Christ and filling in each other's strengths and weaknesses, but that community aspect is so important. You were talking about female friends.
Yeah, that's it.
At least for me in my own walk, God really brought me good, godly women as friends. And I have great friends, otherwise too, but like some really strong women in the Lord that can build you up, speak truth to you. I thought about that when you mentioned Holly. So she was your first friend here, first person you met here, really?
Yep.
What a godsend for her to be, I don't know if you know Holly, but she's amazing. Holly, if you're watching, like,
She'll be watching.
we need you on.
Absolutely, you do.
I know we should have had her today, but like, what a blessing for her to be.
And she
she's
was
amazing.
the first.
She's
so I always
incredible.
joke and say Holly patted my butt the first day we met because that's just a Holly thing.
Holly gives the best hugs, and she always pats your
And
booty.
she pats your booty. So she pats my husband's booty still
She
to this
does.
day. Like,
She
it's a
does
whole
everyone.
thing. My kids, like, oh, she's a booty patter. But I was like, who
She's
is
just
this
like a
girl?
love.
She hugs big, right?
Oh, it's like her whole body hugs you. I
and
love it.
She hugged me and acted like I was her, like, long lost
Best
sister.
friend, yes.
And I'm like, I don't know you. You know, it's kind of freaky, but she literally has become my sister. And we laugh and say, you're the sister I never wanted. Like, it's just the truth with us. But she's amazing. And so she helped break down that fear of getting close to people again, because I didn't want to. I don't want you to know my story. That's scary and ugly. And I messed up. And, you know, you don't want to show people those things. But truly, I needed to show people those things. And I need, you know, we're not called to live this life by ourselves.
Right.
And I wanted, at my core, I wanted that relationship. I wanted friendships, but I was scared to death of them. And Holly really helped kind of bring that out. And I will say, even in the last couple of years, Free to Be has really brought that out for me. I've been able to work alongside a ministry with Tammy Timbarge, and that's how I met you guys. And I mean, that's been a huge just blessing. I mean, what a gift to be able to work alongside women and have these beautiful Christian friendships. You guys are like my sisters, you know, and
Same.
I never would have gotten to know you guys had it not been for those things. So yeah, it's just, again, just God's gift, God's goodness.
Yes, it
I
is such a
totally agree.
gift. Yeah.
Well, like something that you don't even know this yet. I haven't even told you, so surprise. But last Friday, you actually spoke something into me that I had been praying for. And a couple weeks ago, I think I heard somebody talking about identities that we put on ourselves that, you know, maybe the devil used to twist something good that God gives you. And I had been praying, God, show me what identities that I'm putting on myself that maybe aren't correct, maybe aren't as positive or more positive than I'm seeing them. And I was calling it a lie-identity. So what are my lie-identities?
I like that.
And you over on Friday, you had said something to someone about me being still waters run deep.
Girl, you are.
And I didn't know what that meant. But I always just thought, you know, people say, oh, you're so quiet. You're so quiet. And that's just something I am quiet, you know, until I'm not. And then whatever. My kids wouldn't say I'm quiet. But you said that. And I went home and looked it up and it just kept playing in my head. Like, what does this even mean? And I read the definition. I was like, oh, I am quiet. And it's a strength. That's okay. And so you spoke that. You answered my prayer on Friday. So thank you.
Love that.
But I love it.
That.
But just like that, the community of women, that's what we're hoping to build here.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's just beautiful. So keep doing what you do.
Oh, thank you.
And thanks for coming today to share.
I'm so glad to be here. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
And thank you for tuning in. We're happy to have you here. Like Lindsay said earlier, we release a video every Tuesday. So if you would like and subscribe and ring that little notification bell, you'll get the notification that says, hey, we're here and we've got a new video. Also follow us on all our social media. So we're on Facebook and Instagram because we post there every day. And if you have any prayer requests, put them in the comments. We'd love to pray with you. And it'd be a really cool idea if you would post your comment and then pray for the person above you who posted, because that's another way that we can do
prayer
community
train
together. Yeah,
on YouTube.
for sure.
Yeah.
But until we see you next time, grab a shield. We'll see you out there.